Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about fault code P0191, which stands for Distribution Manifold Pressure Sensor, Performance/Limit Problem. This code can be a bit of a pain to diagnose, but I'm going to walk you through the steps on how to do it. First, we'll need to understand what the distribution manifold pressure sensor is and what it does. Then, we'll look at the different symptoms that can be caused by this code. Finally, we'll go over the steps on how to diagnose and fix the problem. So, if you're having trouble with fault code P0191, be sure to check out this video. I'm confident that it will help you get your car back on the road in no time. The P0191 fault code indicates a problem with the distribution manifold pressure sensor. This sensor is responsible for measuring the fuel pressure in the common rail of your car's engine. When the sensor detects a problem with the fuel pressure, it sends a signal to the engine control unit, ECU. The ECU then stores the P0191 code and illuminates the check engine light on your dashboard. There are several possible causes of the P0191 fault code. These include faulty distribution manifold pressure sensor. The sensor itself may be faulty and need to be replaced. Clogged fuel filter. A clogged fuel filter can restrict fuel flow and cause the fuel pressure to drop. Fuel pump problems. A weak or failing fuel pump can also cause the fuel pressure to drop. Fuel injector problems. Leaky or clogged fuel injectors can also cause the fuel pressure to drop. Electrical problems. Wiring problems or a faulty ECU can also cause the P0191 code to be stored. To diagnose the P0191 code, you will need to use a scan tool to read the code stored in the ECU. Once you have identified the code, you can then start to troubleshoot the problem. The first step is to check the fuel pressure. You can do this by using a fuel pressure gauge. If the fuel pressure is low, then you will need to investigate the possible causes listed above. If the fuel pressure is normal, then you will need to check the distribution manifold pressure sensor. You can do this by using a multimeter to measure the voltage and resistance of the sensor. If the sensor is faulty, then you will need to replace it. If the sensor is not faulty, then you will need to investigate the other possible causes of the P0191 code. This may involve checking the fuel filter, fuel pump, fuel injectors, and wiring. The repair for the P0191 code will depend on the underlying cause of the problem. If the problem is caused by a faulty sensor, then you will need to replace the sensor. If the problem is caused by a clogged fuel filter, then you will need to replace the fuel filter. If the problem is caused by a fuel pump problem, then you will need to repair or replace the fuel pump. If the problem is caused by a fuel injector problem, then you will need to clean or replace the fuel injectors. If the problem is caused by an electrical problem, then you will need to repair the wiring or replace the ECU. The P0191 fault code can be caused by a variety of problems. If you are experiencing this code, it is important to have it diagnosed and repaired by a qualified mechanic. The P0191 code can cause a variety of symptoms, including check engine light illumination. This is the most common symptom of the P0191 code. The check engine light will illuminate when the PCM detects a problem with the fuel rail pressure sensor. Rough idle. The engine may idle rough or stall when the P0191 code is present. This is because the PCM is not able to accurately control the fuel injection pressure. Hesitation or stumbling during acceleration. The engine may hesitate or stumble during acceleration when the P0191 code is present. This is because the PCM is not able to accurately control the fuel injection pressure. Reduce fuel economy. The P0191 code can cause the engine to run rich, which can reduce fuel economy. Black smoke from the exhaust. The P0191 code can cause the engine to run rich, which can produce black smoke from the exhaust. If you are experiencing any of the symptoms listed above, it is important to have the P0191 code diagnosed by a qualified mechanic. The mechanic will use a scan tool to retrieve the code from the PCM. They will then use a variety of diagnostic tools and tests to determine the cause of the code. Some of the most common causes of the P0191 code include faulty fuel rail pressure sensor. The fuel rail pressure sensor is a common failure point for the P0191 code. The sensor can fail due to a variety of reasons, including age, wear, and contamination. Clogged fuel filter. A clogged fuel filter can restrict fuel flow to the fuel rail, which can cause the P0191 code. Fuel pump problems. A weak or failing fuel pump can also cause the P0191 code. The fuel pump is responsible for supplying fuel to the engine, and if it is not working properly, it can cause the fuel pressure to drop. Electrical problems. Electrical problems such as a faulty wiring harness or a loose connection can also cause the P0191 code. The repair for the P0191 code will vary depending on the cause of the code. If the fuel rail pressure sensor is faulty, it will need to be replaced. If the fuel filter is clogged, it will need to be replaced. If the fuel pump is weak or failing, it will need to be replaced. If there are electrical problems, they will need to be repaired. In some cases, the P0191 code may be caused by a temporary problem, such as a loose gas cap. If this is the case, the code may go away on its own after the problem is fixed. However, if the code persists, it is important to have it diagnosed and repaired by a qualified mechanic. The P0191 code is a relatively common code, and it can be caused by a variety of factors. If you are experiencing any of the symptoms listed above, it is important to have the code diagnosed by a qualified mechanic. The repair for the P0191 code will vary depending on the cause of the code. In some cases, the P0191 code may be caused by a temporary problem, such as a loose gas cap. If this is the case, the code may go away on its own after the problem is fixed. However, if the code persists, it is important to have it diagnosed and repaired by a qualified mechanic.